What's happened there is that they lowered world use 3 million metric tons, which is basically 120 million bushels. So we're really getting caught on one a little bit, our wheat's a little bit more expensive, but the bigger thing is the world just using less of it than we expected. That's the exports. If we come down here a little bit though, this is the stocks to use ratio. Basically that's saying for every 2 bushels of wheat we have left, we have 1 left over. So you wonder why wheat prices are low? It's because we have a lot of it, especially compared to use. It is a little bit interesting. It's the first time in a long time the market's paying about 6 cents a month to store that stuff for the next few months. I'm not sure that's enough, but it's about the highest I've seen in quite a while. The problem with looking at wheat futures is we don't have a clue what the basis is going to be, which makes it awful hard to give it any pricing. Wheat fell, which seems a little bit odd, except at these higher, when we look at, we all know wheat seedings are down, which I'm going to talk about next. You would think that would have helped wheat prices somewhat, but that huge decrease in world use really hit the market pretty high. Again, a lot of risk even into March. Winter wheat seedings, 37.1, down minus 14.3% from a year ago, and then I'm going to go to the same one we did earlier. The lowest estimate the trade had was 38.5, and it was even considerably below that. So this number was really low. If you look at it with wheat alone, you'd think it was positive. But if you look at, wheat, U.S. wheat alone, you'd think it's positive. But when you put it in perspective of the amount of wheat in the world, it still wasn't enough to, quote, get the job done. Although if we start having a poor growing season, it can make a huge difference as we go into next year. Here goes back a while. It's the lowest planted. It probably won't be the lowest harvested. Now it could be, we don't know what it's going to be there, but if you look at about this much, you come down here, this was a disaster year for harvesting, but if we take the normal amount off of this, it's going to be about as low. And in fact, this is the lowest amount of wheat planted, winter wheat planted in this country since 1913. And if someone here could tell me what happened in 1913, I'd appreciate it, because I was only a little kid at the time. I asked my 90-year-old dad, and he couldn't even tell me. You can do the math. This is winter wheat planted. I thought these numbers were going to show up a little bit better. This is 500 off 120,000 acres from a year ago. Now, of course, there's a bunch of reasons for that. Late harvesting, poor weather. But remember, last year was down over 100 as well. Now, that was one of the largest years. All the red is where there is a decrease. So it's pretty much universal across the place where these winter wheats were planted. I've been kind of through this one. A balance sheet for wheat. This one now goes out to 2010. I lowered it. I happen to leave spring wheat the same. It could go up 1 million acres or down 1 million acres. I put us in at trend yield, and I'll be darned, it really lowers ending stocks by 150 million bushels, and then we only have a little over a bushel left for each 3 bushels we have. So that's a lot. To get this to sort of a price where we don't need to go all the way down to 13%, but somewhere around that, even the 20% starts giving us a better prices. So as we look in the next year, the market is saying they'll pay more for a little bit more for next summer's crop, but not very much. And then the market's kind of assuming as we go out to next year after that, the world will make a bigger adjustment. That's not a weather thing there. Wheat futures, the risk is quite a bit. To get on to soybeans, I've finally put some text in here. The story's been exports, and exports, as it said, and you can read the third exports, as we'll get to, not just the soybeans, but of soybean oil and soybean meal. Then the story's going to be, and it's already happening, the size of the South American crop. Just how big is it going to be, and how much effect will it have? And then after that, we come back to world demand. The China ports stayed this morning. They're still bringing them in. They actually have almost a record domestic stocks of soybeans in their country. They're not as good as soybean. So you wonder when it'll happen. They'll easily be able to switch to South America if they want to. And at some point they might have to, because we can't keep going. And then once we know that, then the big thing is going to be world demand. And again, exports and exports. The yield, as you see, was a record yield at 44 bushels an acre. A funny thing happens when you have record number of acres harvested and record yields. Lo and behold, you have record production. Okay? I think I got that right. I'd like to say one thing right a meeting. It might have been my second one, but I can't remember. How did that match up with the trade? Again, the production wasn't very much off. It was a little higher than the trade was expected, but well within the range. The stocks number, though, was actually below the trade number. So negative to the market, the little bit more production, positive to market, the lack in stocks. The blues an increase. There wasn't a lot of records. There was a record yield down in Ohio, Kentucky down through here where they finally got some moisture. Through here there was good yields, but not anywhere near the record yields. Iowa's been 3 or 4 higher than that before. Illinois has been in the 50s before. Indiana hadn't been much higher than that. That's probably near their record. If we look at the changes from the previous report, we'd already talked about the production one. Seed and residual was changed somewhat. Domestic use was increased. Exports were increased by about 35 million bushels, and at this point it still doesn't seem to be slowing down, but we need to be way ahead if we want to have good exports because of what's coming in South America. So if we look at these soybeans, why are people getting excited about that? You know, we're almost 230 million bushels ahead. You know, about 40-some% higher than a year ago already on those exports. If we look at export sales, we're about 50% ahead of a year ago. Huge numbers. And then I hadn't been paying as much attention as I probably should have. Soy oil, 230 last year, 830 now. Soy meal, now those did pick up a little bit faster towards the end of last year, but still almost double the amount of soybean meal's been going out. Why? One of the biggest soybean and meal and oil exporter in the past has been Argentina, and Argentina had a horrible soybean crop last year, despite planting way more soybean acres. The first time I saw the Argentina projection last year, it was the same as this, and this is what they ended up with. So there's a huge increase there. Brazil had a decent increase, not a great yield, probably a little bit below trend yield. This year they're having, it appears, and of course they won't be harvesting this till late February and into March. And if you know Brazil, from the equator down as far as they grow soybeans in Argentina is an awful